For my book series, I need to decide who should be the first vampire and who should be the Grim Reaper. Cain the first murderer or Abel the first victim. Both options have strong symbolism, and I honestly don't know which fits best. So today I'm going to break down both possibilities, and I want you to help me decide. In my world, there are lots of supernatural figures, from orcs, onis, goblins, elves, dwarfs. One of the most important races is vampires, as, well, they've been around since the dawn of time. But they're also seen as a parasite, so you have two main strands, from Judas later, and then from either Cain or Abel now, like at the beginning. But then you've also got, like, elf vampires, orc vampires, human vampires, which are considered full or purebloods or whatever. We'll get onto that in another video. But essentially, they've been around for so long, that bloodline, they're now considered true or pure, as opposed to being turned. So you've now got a lineage or birthed, which is all different. But I'm trying to figure out if Cain or Abel should be that first progenitor. And as I've said, I've narrowed it down to Cain or Abel. Both choices are so compelling that I'm stuck. So let's break it down, both possibilities. And by the end, I want to hear which one you, like yes, you watching this right now or listening to this, think is best. Now, before we dive in, I have to address the elephant in the room. Cain is almost always linked with vampires in other stories. It is just the mark of Cain, or is there a deeper reason? We'll come back to that. I just want to know, like, why is that the case, you know? I've heard that in some biblical stories it is, but I don't know if I want to do something similar with my own twist or something different and subvert expectations. Speaking of that, let's get started with why Cain could be the vampire progenitor in my book. The Curse of Cain, right? The mark of Cain. Well, let's start with the Curse of Cain. It could be cursed with immortality and bloodlust. Cain was cursed to wander the earth forever. In my book, this curse could transform him into a vampire. He doesn't just live forever, but he feeds on blood to survive because he took the blood of his brother. So spilling the blood, it becomes his punishment to need blood. The mark of Cain as the origin of vampires, like that mark could be the origin of the vampires going forward. Instead of just being a symbol, the mark of Cain could be the first vampiric trait. This means his descendants inherit the curse, creating the first bloodline of vampires. Biblical and literally influence. Many vampires in stories are already connected to Cain vampirism. For example, Vampire of the Masquerade. On here, on my notes, for some reason it says supernatural, but I believe he was a demon and not that in supernatural. But as well as the Vampire of the Masquerade, I believe it is also in what's it called? It's I can't remember the name, but it was like a movie series. I think in like early 2000s, and it's about werewolves versus vampires. The one who was in Good Omens, the one who played the angel, he was in it, and he played the first Lycan, I believe. Anyway, it's often considered like Cain being the first vampire in that stories of, I believe, and Abel being the first werewolf. So I could do that, you know, that's the thing. This works if Cain's the first vampire. It makes the curse the foundation of the entire vampire race, which is what other races will see it as. So you've got the pure original bloodline, which is his, which is considered, you know, royalty among vampires. And then you've got all the other species they would have turned over time, which are now like nobles, if you will, you know, like the originals. And then you've got obviously later Judas, and they would all be seen as cursed, right? And they would have their own society, and we'll get onto that in another video once we've dealt with other races. But the point is, like, so what about Abel as the first vampire? Now, this was an idea I had in mind because I wanted Cain to be the first vampire, but then I also had the idea of him being the Grim Reaper, which we'll get onto in just a bit in the video. So I thought, well, if he was going to be the Grim Reaper, how would Abel work as the vampire? And here's what I came in mind. The bitter irony of his resurrection. Abel was brutally killed by his brother. But in this version, in my story, he's brought back from death. But something's missing. Like something in him is just not right. It doesn't, like, everything's gone right, but just something isn't right. So, and then the trauma plus the resurrection equals his obsession with blood. So I'm thinking he is traumatized from dying from blood loss, that he gets an obsession with needing blood. It's almost it is an obsession beyond belief, to the point he starts feasting on blood, because it's like, I need to eat to survive. I need blood to survive. I need blood to survive. And from him on, so he doesn't need blood to survive, but it's the trauma is so big, plus the something missing equals him to feast on blood, that then his offspring do need it to survive. And he goes, and then this is also like irony of from kindness to hunger. He was once a gentle shepherd, but after his resurrection, he is no longer the same person. Instead of his caring life, he feeds on it. So instead of caring for life, he cares for it. The irony that he once protected, now he's prey. The symbolism of the first victim becoming the first predator. Cain killed him out of jealousy. Now Abel takes from the world just as he was taken. His vampirism isn't punishment, but a tragedy. If Abel is the first vampire, it turns his resurrection into a curse. His suffering doesn't end with death, it just transforms into something else. And I think this could be very poetic, especially partnered with Cain being cursed with immortality and later becoming the Grim Reaper, as we'll get into in literally the next point. But I think that works so well, right? And then it could make it sad, like his blood, because he is now a perversion of what he once was. And then if he was, it would then be that at some point maybe he regrets it, but he can't do anything about it. Oh, by the way, in my version, each vampire is slightly different. So, like, whichever Cain or Abel will have, like, whichever one we choose will have their own powers and weaknesses for vampires. And then those that are turned by them and so those that are side by them and then their children will have those strengths and weaknesses, which will be different from Judas as a vampire and from later the other species. So in the modern day, it's not modern day, but like in the current time of the story, there will be other like old vampire races, you know, like a lineage of elf vampires and orc vampires, which will now have their own strengths and weaknesses over time. But they're also, it's based off, but then there's, which come from their species, but then there's also the core of whichever they were side from long ago, be that Cain/Abel or Judas. So, who should be the Grim Reaper? As we said, option 1 is Cain. So if we choose Abel to be the vampire, Cain would be the Grim Reaper. Now, immortality is a curse. Instead of a vampire, Cain lives for thousands of years, but his body decays. So he is cursed with immortality. The mark of Cain is engraved on him, and it stops him from dying from anything. And in my mind, this also includes like death, like in any form. Like if someone has the power of death, universe erasure, like anything. Like he will live for eternity, even if existence is wiped out. I'm thinking the only one who could kill him is either Azrael or God. Azrael being the angel of death. So the idea would be like his flesh isn't immortal, so eventually he withers to bone and becoming the Grim Reaper we once know. And that scythe is literally not a weapon. It's what he used because he was a farmer of crop, unlike his brother who was of that. And then it becomes a symbol of him harvesting souls. So Cain was the very first to take a life. So his punishment is to serve death forever. So first, he was cursed to walk the earth for thousands of years. And eventually, he's given a chance for redemption when Azrael, the angel of death, asks him to essentially work with him, like, for redemption. Like, you'll be redeemed if for X amount of millennia or eons, you guide souls to the afterlife. Now, this could work as Cain being punished, not with death, but with becoming death's servant forever. He becomes the human embodiment of death. Maybe, in fact, he just becomes either his world or all humans' death, you know? So, he's not death for other species or other monsters, but specifically for humans. Or it's just his planet. He is death for that planet. And Azrael serves the multiverse, the omniverse, everything, you know? Option 2 is Abel being the Grim Reaper. The first soul to die becomes death itself, working for Azrael. Abel was the first human to experience death. Instead of being resurrected or just dying normally, he is transformed into the Grim Reaper. Abel is not some skeleton monster, but a sorrowful, compassionate guide of souls. He understands death because he was the first to suffer it. Azrael comes to him with an offer, but his role is different from Cain's. If Cain were to be the Grim Reaper, it's about understanding death, not atoning for it. So it is more of going to Abel because he knows Abel is a kind, or because she knows, because in my vision, Azrael's probably going to be a female. Well, they're probably kind of going to be beyond all that, but yeah. But Azrael goes to Abel, knowing he was a caring, loving person who loved God and believed in God and cared for his animals, that even as he took their lives for food and stuff like that, he did it in such a way where it was kind and caring. And Azrael saw that quality and was like, do you want to do this? I would like you to guide souls so they don't suffer or try to escape. So Abel as the Grim Reaper makes death a figure of wisdom and sorrow rather than punishment. So Cain essentially will kind of, I'm thinking Cain will kind of be like, it's full of self-pity, right? I'm thinking maybe for a few hundred years he may hate God, maybe even for more. But then at some point, I want him to feel sorry for what he did. Like, he felt sorry for killing Abel, And then eventually he comes to terms with it and then he becomes dead. But there's no connection with humanity. It is a job that he's trying to make up for his sins. Where Abel will be a wise, welcoming figure to the dead souls, So here's the question. Who fits which role better? Should Cain be the first vampire cursed to thirst for blood? Or does his punishment make him a better Grim Reaper, guiding souls for eternity? What about Abel? Does his tragic resurrection make him the first vampire? Or is his connection to death the reason he should become the Reaper? I honestly can't decide which fits better. So I want to hear from you. Who do you think should be the vampire progenitor, and who should be death? Who should be the Grim Reaper? Let me know in the comments below. And this is just the beginning, because in my world, vampires don't just come from one source, Cain's lineage or Abel's lineage, but later, Judas, as I've mentioned several times. And if you want to hear different bloodlines changes the vampire nature, stay tuned for that, as I will get onto that. But probably first, every other post, should I say, will be about my book from now on, and it will probably be giving you information on it or asking questions like this. For example, I'm working on currently I'm working on skills, getting skills and abilities for down, and then deciding who to give them to. But I will go over how the world works, but I also want to go over the races and how they should work. Because I don't want to just do a carbon copy of everything else. I want to do my own version, but I want to be able to get inspiration and ideas from elsewhere, as well as run it by you as you're the audience of my book. I want to be selling my book to. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I've been your host, Sonthan Misoth. This has been the Geek Odyssey. So be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And check out any videos, my last 2 videos. I think they are amazing, and the fact that as of recording they've only got 11 views and 4 likes is baffling. They should be some of my best. But hey ho, that's what I get for being ill and having time off. But I am back now. So yeah, thank you. Peace.